Okay, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Progressive Web Apps 101, the What, Why, and How webinar. This is the first of series of webinar we will be running in the next few months. And given the situation with COVID-19, hopefully all of you are staying safe home. I think we'll give a couple of minutes before we start, waiting for everybody to join in, and we'll get started. Okay. Right. I think we're starting considerable people. Hello. Hi, everyone. Okay. Okay, we're starting some more people. We reached already a good number at the moment. So I won't take much more time. I think we'll get started immediately. Well, thank you everybody for joining this with the webinar. First of all, I like to go through what are going to be the objective and what is it you're going to get out of this webinar today. You will the scope is for you to get an understanding on what are progressive web apps, and also to be able to be in a position to decide whether PWA is something right for your project or activities you're trying to pursue. Quickly regarding the agenda. So we'll go through some market research and studies we have done. Then my colleague Brian will introduce you to progressive web apps. Then we will move to a deep dive into progressive web apps, and Ben will cover that piece. And we'll close the session with Q&A. So regarding the speakers today, we have here on the line with us Brian Chung. Brian is an expert software engineer here at Zuhlke, Hong Kong, and his expertise is on mobile and web software development. Brian, do you want to say a couple of words about yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hello, everyone. I'm Brian. Nice to meet you all. So I joined Zuhlke 2 years ago as a software engineer. And my background, from my past experience, I mainly focused on mobile development, especially in iOS. Yep.
Thank you, Brian. Online here, we also have Ben Fowler. Ben is an advanced software engineer here at Zuhlke, Hong Kong, and he's also specialized in mobile and web software development. Ben, would you like to share a couple of words about yourself?
Afternoon, everyone. Hopefully we won't keep you from lunch too long. So I've been with Zuhlke since December, right before all this mess started. So good time to join as any. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Thank you. And about myself, my name is Antonio Tinto. I am a senior business development manager here at Zuhlke, Hong Kong. Quickly about Zuhlke, Hong Kong. Zuhlke is essentially was founded in Switzerland in 1968 by Mr. Zuhlke, and is an innovation service provider. We have about 14 offices around the globe. We have over 1,000 employees, and we run 10,000 successful projects across different industries. But before we go ahead, I wanted to give you a little bit of our roles here. You might probably have noticed that you are on mute, so if you're trying to speak and that doesn't work, it's because you have been unmuted by Zoom, by the system. What I like also to share with you is that you might see that at the bottom on the bar there is a black bar where it will show you about there's a chat, there is a raise hands and Q&A session. So we will be using the Q&A part to ask the questions basically at the end of this webinar. We will also be using raise hands to ask you questions. It's essentially a visual way of raising your hands. And then you can use also the chat to share comments or additional feedback to what we are trying to say, what the point of trying to say here. Say that I think we can get quickly started. Before I go to the market research, I want to share with you how did we come up with this PWA Progressive Web App webinar. So back a few years ago, maybe about 15 years ago, I was running a startup in Beijing, and we were basically considering how to run our web, our ideas. And so talking to different engineers, the best way to do it in a quick manner and the budget. With the limited budget was building basically a progressive web app. But the only downside was that user experience was not the best, given that there were some limitation in terms of infrastructure, such as the network, the internet 10 years ago, more than 10 years ago, was very slow, and also the devices were not ready, so the technology was not there yet. Okay. And very recently, we have been in conversation with our clients regarding such similar things, and we have been developing progressive web apps in this similar context. So anyway, fast forwarding. So today, within the research, we kind of looked at what is the market, what's going on in the market within progressive web apps. So we noticed that essentially mobile apps are still, majority are 87% of the apps are native on the mobile phone for the users, and only 13% is web. This is the data from 2015, but there is a slight change for now, where there's a little bit more mobile web, but pretty much the features are like this. We also noticed that users spend 80% of their time on actually native apps. So which are usually the three top apps. And what we did, we also went to look at why with the infrastructure, what happens in infrastructure now today? Why we still have so many native apps when what is going on with infrastructure? We noticed that the actual infrastructure themselves, the technology has progressed enormously. And I think Brian and Ben will cover the piece and explain you more about it. But also the internet has become way faster. Before, our biggest challenge was actually the internet speed was fairly low, and we couldn't get enough data going through. But now there has been a great increase in terms of speed. As you can see from the chart, only from 2017 to 2019, there is an increase of 37% of fixed internet and 21% increase on mobile. And the surprising thing is that Hong Kong and Singapore are actually leading it, and they are we are essentially in the fastest market, internet market. This is for download speed, right, on Earth. Say that I will hand it over to Brian. It's going to give us a little bit more insight of what are progressive web apps. So Brian, I'm going to stop share so you can take it from me. There
Okay.
You go.
Thank you, Antonio.
Thank you.
Great. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So before I talk about PWA, I would like to have a little guest game for you. And do you know who is the first one to introduce the idea of PWA? You have three choices: A, Mark Zuckerberg, and B, Larry Page, C, Steve Jobs. And now we will create a poll in Zoom, and please tell us your answer, and we will come back to this part later.
I'm not allowed to vote.
Yeah, panelists and hosts
I
are not,
like it, yeah.
are not allowed. Yeah. So what is PWA? PWA stands for Progressive Web App. It is a web app that uses modern web capabilities to deliver an app-like experience to users. To make it easier to understand, I will have a quick demo to show you what PWA exactly is. And now let me switch my sharing to my phone. A second. Okay. Are you able to see my phone home screen?
Yeah, I think we see your dog. Yeah.
Yeah, might need to kill dog. Yeah. So here I have installed the Progressive Web App in my phone. And like other native apps, PWA can be installed and add to phone users' home screen. And now let's have a look. As you can see, the overall layout, it looks and feels like a native app. And also it supports native-like interactions. For example, I can pull to refresh. And when I tap on the image, I can zoom in and zoom out using the pen gesture. And also I can swipe back to previous screen. And one of the capabilities from PWA is it can access to device functionalities. And now I would like to create a tweet message. And when I tap the image icon, I can upload a photo by taking a new image from my camera or selecting a photo from the photo gallery. And now I'm going to select a photo from my gallery. And now let me create a tweet. So the user experience feels really like using a native app. And now and that's the end for the quick demo. And let me switch back to the PowerPoint.
That looks very fairly fast. I won't tell that it's actually a web app. It looks like pretty native experience. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, cool. So as some of you may have concerns about PWA's performance because it's implemented using web technologies. So I create a video to compare the code start time between PWA and native. And let's have a look. As you can see from the video, PWA only took around 2 to 3 seconds to load the first page, and the performance is really awesome. It's almost same as the native app. So after the quick demo, I hope you have some basic ideas now. And now let's talk about the history of PWA. So Antonio, could you publish the poll result?
Yes.
Thank you.
Done.
Where is it? I couldn't see it.
I have it here. I have it in me, so I can tell you that that 26% has voted for Mark Zuckerberg, 42% for Larry Page, and 32% Steve Jobs.
Okay, so only 22% got the correct answer. So the answer is Steve Jobs. So way back in 2007, Steve Jobs launched iPhone, and he introduced the idea of using web apps in iPhone. He mentioned developers could use web technologies 2.0 plus Ajax to build web app which behaved exactly like native apps. And also the web app could integrate with iPhone services like making phone call, accessing photo gallery. Moreover, it was easy and distribute the app to end users. And in 2015, Google rehashed the ideas from Apple and create the term PWA. PWA was first officially introduced by Google engineer Alex Russell. He wanted to use these technologies to build applications that could be used in different devices, platforms with one single code base. Also, Google defined the standard of PWA to consider as a progressive web app. It should contain 9 attributes. I will now go through one by one. The first one is responsive, which means the web app should fit for various screen sizes for different devices. Connectivity independent. It means the web app should also work without network. App-like, very straightforward. It means the app should provide app style-like interactions and navigations. Fresh, the application always up to date due to the service worker update process. And in the next slide, I will talk more about service worker. Safe. PWA must be served with HTTPS to go against sleuthing or content tampering. Discoverable, like other websites, PWA is searchable by search engine. Re-engageable, like native apps, PWA also supports push notification. By using the push feature, it can increase the user's return rate. And installable. So PWA allows users to keep app on their phone home screen and without installing app through App Store. And the last one is linkable. It means the app can be easily shared with URL. So in the next slide, I would like to spend some more time to explain what Service Worker is, and also I will explain how PWA works in offline environment. So in PWA, there is a JavaScript component called Service Worker. It acts like a proxy between the application and also the network. It runs in background and supports features like background process and caching data. And also it can handling push notification. So for the first time when users launch the app, Service Worker store all required resources from the application like CSS, HTML files, and images. And therefore, when users visit the app again, it loads very, very fast because it can reuse the cached resources from Service Worker and does not have to download everything again. Furthermore, so, when the app, yes?
Yeah, Brian, I just a question for you. So what happens if we will remove the Service Worker from that?
So if you remove the Service Worker, it will not be PWA anymore. Actually, Service Worker is really important. Without it, you cannot do offline browsing. You cannot receive push notification. So actually, okay. Service Worker is one of the core components in PWA.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Moreover, when the application makes level call, Service Worker can cache the response data from the server side. So when users runs the app in low network environment, the application are still able to show information to users because it can use the cache data from Service Worker. Nowadays, we already have some technologies used for mobile web app or mobile website. And why do we still need PWA? I have summarized 3 important points here. Firstly, PWA loads instantly fast when app start. Speed is very important. According to ComScore's study, 40% of users will abandon the app if it loads more than 3 seconds. Secondly, PWA provides a better user experience because it acts and behaves like a native app. For example, they sit in a user's phone screen, able to receive push notification. So the experience feels seamless and integrated. And lastly, PWA is more reliable thanks to the cache features provided by Service Worker. The app are still able to show information to users without network. Because of the capabilities of PWA, more and more companies start using these technologies. For example, Twitter, Trivago, Uber, or even NASA are using it. And now let's talk about the benefits of using PWA. So here I have create a comparison table summarizing the capabilities between responsive website, progressive web app, and native app. From the comparison table, we can see that PWA not only contains the key features from native app, like offline browsing and support push notification, but it also contains the key features from responsive website, which are single code based, cost platform, easy to share and distribute. And of course, PWA is not a silver bullet. It also has some limitations. Firstly, the functionalities depends on operating systems. As you all know, PWA, the standard is created by Google, and Apple may not fully support all the features from PWA. For example, in iOS, it does not support web push notification and also no background process. Secondly, PWA is a sandbox. It cannot access and no integrations with other applications. And lastly, it's not possible to lock the orientation. So when you work on PWA, you should think carefully how it looks and works in both portrait and landscape mode. And that's all from my part. And now I will pass to my colleague Ben, and he will give you more detailed information. Yep.
Thanks, Brian. So before we get that, we just want to see whether there is any quick question. I had a quick question myself for you. So when we look at the our responsive apps and the PWA, what's the exact difference? I see there is a limitation in terms of features, right? About what makes the big difference.
Yeah, let's go back to the comparison table. So here for responsive website, it does not support features like offline browsing, push notification, and also it cannot access functionality. So it makes really big difference between PWA and just responsive website.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So in I was looking at whether we have any question.
And also we have one question here. Can we have, how do I download PWA is full? Okay, let me answer this question first. Maybe I can show you using a real demo. Give me a second. I need to switch back to the screen. Okay, first you need to open the Safari. And then, for example, now I'm going to install a progressive web app for Pinterest. So what you have to do is just you tap the share icon here, and then so that is a item called Add to Home Screen. You just click on it.
Okay.
Yes, the plus button, and then you just press the Add button here. Now you can see that we have add the PWA into our phone home screen, and when you tap on it, it will not open the Safari and become a full screen app.
And you can log in from that, basically. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Very clear. Thank you. That's clear.
Yep. And also we have one more questions. Can we have a sync wheel in mobile PWA? Ben, do you have experience on it?
Yeah, I was just looking at that question. I'm not certain the context of having a shrink view. It sounds more like a layout thing than technology specific, as far as I can tell.
Maybe Gaurav, if you can be a little bit more specific, we can pick up this question later. Shall we go next to, we'll pick up our question later on in the Q&A session. Let's move on with the Ben section.
Okay, now I'm going to stop sharing. Ben, your turn.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, give me a minute to share my stuff. All right, here we go. All right.
We're getting some question as well. Cool. Yeah, we can see your screen.
Full screen?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So hello again. Earlier, Brian was showing all the examples of everyone that was using PWA or has migrated over to it. So we're going to focus on three. We're going to do some case studies, and that will be Twitter, Trivago, and Pinterest. Right, so Trivago. So they had the problem that a large increase in mobile users, and they were trying to target them, but as the website currently stood, you know, there's problems with it. Internet connectivity variants can affect user experience quite a fair bit, and they think, okay, well, what happens if we switch over to a native app? Well, one of the problems with that is very few users ever want to download an app. It's a massive point of friction. So decided, all right, we'll give PWA a shot. And the solution, the results, as you can see here, it says more than 500,000 people added a Trivago shortcut to their home screen, and the engagement increased by around 150%. Compared to previous mobile websites, progressive web apps attracted far more users.
Wow.
So going on to Twitter, same thing. They had a problem, not too similar from Trivago, in that slow mobile network usage, and devices also have limited storage. And, you know, that means less usage time of the Twitter app, which, you know, is never good for business. So decided to give the PWA go. The results, as in previous story, the add to home screen prompt, push notifications increased the user engagement significantly. Twitter noticed around 250,000 unique daily users run Twitter Lite from the home screen 4 times a day on average. What's more, there's something more than 10 million push notifications per day. And finally, Pinterest. As you can see here, after analyzing usage for unauthenticated mobile web users, they realized that their old, slow web experience only managed to convert 1% of their users into signups. Nothing really to boast about that. So they thought, right, let's give PWA a go. Results. Users' time went up by 40% compared to old mobile web experience. User-generated ad revenue is up 44%, and core engagement up by 60%. Right, so after that, we'll further go and ask the question, do you need a PWA? Right, so the reasons why you should and should not use them, or in the scenarios around it. So we don't recommend using a PWA if you want to fully support all browsers. When the technology was first proposed by Google, obviously Chrome was at the forefront, leading edge of it, because it was proposed by them. All the other browsers hadn't yet caught up. However, now it's becoming quite popular, so they're pushing for it, and a lot of them are working to adopt it rather. However, there is one browser which some people still try to support for whatever reason, and that is IE11. You're not going to have much luck there, I'm afraid. So I wouldn't, if you really, really need IE11, PWA is not for you, I'm afraid. As Brian alluded to earlier, you want all PWA features across all devices. And when we say that, we mean the native ones. So access to the camera, geolocation, all that kind of stuff. Apple is in contention with Google in terms of competition, so has been reluctant to let PWA have access to native features. So again, if you need that across iOS, for everything that your product has,
Ben, I just wanted to clarify. Ben, I just want to clarify for the audience that IE11 you mean Internet Explorer, just to make sure that everybody gets that. So,
yeah, IE11, Internet Explorer 11.
Yeah. Thank you.
If there's any developers here, everyone knows that is a cause of contention amongst all developers. For salespeople, don't ask them to do anything on IE11. They won't like you for it. And finally, computation-heavy operations. Let's say your app, you wanted to run it on PWA or on even on web, not just PWA alone, it runs better on native app because I have access to the native phone's computation resources. However, WebAssembly is improving this, so this may not be a problem forever, but I wouldn't rely on it. Right, so moving on to when you should use a PWA. And this is if any of the following scenarios is true, in my humble opinion. I think these are all good times to use a PWA, especially that last one, if anyone watches Game of Thrones at all. So wait, what does that mean? I should always use it, and I would say yes. There's very little reason not to. And to sum up why, all the benefits you get from it, the amount of effort versus reward in this case is pretty easy to weigh up. So for sales, to translate it, progressive enhancement. So make the web app experience faster and more reliable. And old users that still continue to use the old website and don't convert to PWA, doesn't break it for them. So it's all upside, and it doesn't affect the old experience. And the new one, it improves it, right? You want to save costs, right? So single code base for all platforms. Previously, if you wanted to target everything, iOS, Windows, Android, you potentially needed engineers for all three, because not everyone's full stack and knows all of them. So that's more bodies, that's more cost going into making sure you can target everything. With PWA, you just need someone who knows a bit of JavaScript, or all the engineers, and you essentially have the reach of the web, but it has a native experience, cheaper to build and maintain. Single source of truth. So essentially, what this means is, again, in terms of development, it's much cheaper and easier to roll out to customers. With native, especially Apple, the massive issue comes with trying to release to the Apple Store. It is a massive pain compared to the other ones. Whereas with PWA, you can press click, and within minutes it's released. And if anything's wrong, you can roll it back. You do not have that benefit with the Apple Store, I'm afraid. So it saves you a lot of headache there. And another thing you don't have to do is support legacy APIs. So if you update any APIs, you had to keep maintenance of the old ones for users who had not yet updated their native app, because otherwise it might crash or produce
so Ben, sorry to interrupt you for a second. Yeah, so from what you're saying, it just sounds like there is a lot of time saving and cost saving when basically building in PWA app, right? Am I hearing correctly?
Yeah, definitely. That's exactly where I'm going for this.
Okay.
You don't need to deal with a lot of the headache that comes with development on native apps.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And next, low friction. As Brian showed, it's really easy. You just add to home screen. Doesn't take any time to download, whatever. Easy to find and share. You can send someone the website, and if they want to add it to the home screen, they go ahead. Makes it easy. So we all know low friction always means more traffic, more ad revenue, more metrics, all good stuff. All right, so in summary, who will benefit the most from using a PWA? Right, so in the case of no existing product, right, I would say you would benefit highly from a PWA because it's easy to develop for, as I mentioned earlier, low cost. It has great reach because it has, the web as the reach rather than native, which has to rely on people actually downloading the app, which is never good. Low investment and quicker to market release. All these really good point for no existing product, especially if it's a point of concept and you want to try it out, see how it does first, rather than committing to native app development. If you already have a website, I would say you would benefit, again, low risk, high reward. You immediately, as you saw from the case studies, can benefit greatly from it. And the old existing website continues as is. No problem there whatsoever. Improves engagement and retainment, as we saw with the case studies. And however, if you have a native app, if you switch to PWA, you potentially save costs due to not needing, I probably shouldn't say this as a developer, but here we go. iOS, Android, and Windows devs, you don't really need them anymore if you switch to PWA, or maybe keep them around for a bit, or maybe it's incentive that they learn JavaScript in case. It depends on the complexity of your app in this case. I hope a lot of people aren't looking for jobs after this talk. Please don't take it too seriously. It's just something to consider. And again, another one of my favorites about it, even me as an iOS developer originally, don't have to deal with the Apple Store. I can't tell you how many hours of my day have been used specifically only dealing with the Apple Store. Zero development done, purely dealing with back and forth with Apple. That, and you don't have a direct contact line with them either, so you have to submit a ticket and get back to you whenever they feel.
It can be very time consuming.
It's not fun. In fact, I could do one of the biggest things I would say is you don't have to deal with the Apple Store. Great, I'm sold.
Yeah.
One caveat.
Just a quick question for you, to just interrupt you for a second, Ben. So these for a POC perspective, you mentioned that sounds very great. How about for a while you have already a native app? So like, why would you switch? Would you switch to apply PWA?
I mean, the reason, as I said, why you would switch is you could cut down on costs. But if it's already an established product and you don't plan on going forward with it anymore, and it's just maintenance, maybe there's no reason to. However, if you want to push the envelope a bit, maybe try and increase user engagement, then switching to a PWA. I mean, the thing is, you could continue to keep the native app, but create a PWA version of it and see how it does, because it's relatively easy, I'd say, compared to a native. It depends on the features of your app, I would say.
Well, it's fascinating to see already, like, companies such as Pinterest, they also develop PWA app. Looks like they managed to actually reach to a wider range of people as well. So because probably with the usability, a lot of people don't download the app because it's native. So that easy to use aspect of just tapping and downloading, it's super quick. So it looks like also benefits. Yeah. Great.
I mean, you'll notice a lot of them, they'll ask you to, it's not a problem, but you'll notice a lot of them, they'll say when you're browsing the website, you can download our app. So they already have a native version of it, and now they also have a PWA, so they cover all their bases. So as I said,
they cover everything.
Thank you. So going back, no problem. Going back to the caveats, as Brian mentioned, without the native app, you don't have access to some of the native features. Hopefully, Apple will, buckle on this a little bit and support PWA, but I wouldn't count on it. Right. So next, we'll go to some do's and don'ts. All right. So implement the service worker first. As we talked about earlier, if without service worker, you pretty much do not have a PWA, right? So get it out the way. And it is not massively difficult to implement. And here, there's a few resources showing why. I'll cover that in a second. Utilize Google Lighthouse audit tool. This comes in Chrome. You just bring up the development console in Chrome. You click one button and it will start auditing for you, and it will give you a load of feedback on how to make the current website a PWA, as well as a whole other metrics on how to improve your website. I'll give a quick demo of that in a second. Right, so onto the service worker we were talking about. If you are using React to create, Facebook's popular development framework, if you create React app, which helps set up a React project for you immediately, it comes with a service worker baked in. So if you use that, you immediately have one. You're pretty much like step one, your foot's in the door for making a PWA. You're all great. Audit as part of your test cycle. So here at Zuhlke, we do something called TDD. It's nothing new, but it's called test-driven development. We try and drive our development via tests first. So to augment that, when using a PWA and Google Lighthouse, you add audit as part of it. So every time you make a change or a test, click audit, see if you've broken anything, it's gotten worse or not. And overall, you should be on your way to a good mobile PWA experience. Some don'ts. or as the top at the top there, slight typo, some dons. Some don'ts. Do not leave auditing to the final stretch of release if it is imperative to have it as a PWA. You know, this is just common sense. Do your best not to do that, because as easy as some of this, all these tools make it to implement a PWA, you do not want to run into troubles at imperative release point in the app. So I'd say make it iterative throughout your developments. And as I said, Google Lighthouse, no excuse to not do it. And same goes for ignoring the auditable metric feedback. It pretty much gives you a step-by-step on how to improve the things that you either don't implement or have a low score on. Here you have some resources. So some of them I've used. So vardin.com.pwa, it's pretty much a whole website dedicated to implementing a PWA. I think they even have their own framework on how to do it. The second one, Progressive Web Apps, is Google PWA Manifesto. It's a massive resource since they are the one that are pioneering it. It's a much more comprehensive version of this talk. You go through that resource. PWA.rocks, it's just a PWA showcase. You can play with it there. And the last one is another bunch of case studies via Google that you can use. And now I'm going to just switch what I'm sharing, and I'll just give you a quick demo of the Google Lighthouse tool.
Thank you, Ben. In the meantime, so while you run this, I was just wondering, I mean, from what I see, what I'm getting here is that a lot, I mean, it sounds like a perfect tool to bootstrap an idea. If I have a project, you know, limited budget, and I want to really test and try, given that the market adoption can be very quick, the budget is very, you know, very limited budget, and you know, the time to produce it is also very limited because of the tools already present in there. Sounds like a great tool for a POC, like kind of a you know, situation, but also sounds like also an interesting what is stretched over to already something which is already in production, that is already running, where we want to reach out to extend the number of users that are not very keen to adopt a native app can be using basically a free app, can be reached through a PWA app. Very interesting aspect. That's just compared to what we had before in the past, where probably the POC was good enough for that. Good. Yeah, I'll let you go. Please go ahead. Are you ready with to go ahead with the demo?
Yeah. Can you see what I'm looking at?
Yeah. Yes. That's just your screen.
So this was the resource I was talking about before, PWA.rocks. Here's a bunch of PWAs that you can play with. We'll just go to this one here. Right, so what you do is you go to inspect, it'll bring up the bunch of tools on the left here, and you go to audit, right here, see that? You've got your own little lighthouse, and you just click. So one, it has categories, performance, progressive web app, best practices, accessibility, and search engine optimization. You click generate report, and now it's just going to run the website through Lighthouse and audit it, and it'll give it a score at the end of it.
So this tool is for testing the app, or is where you actually develop the app?
Well, you can use it for detecting if you want, but I'm not sure. It's more for development. It'll tell you how to improve it or how to get to PWA. Right, and as you can see here, it gives a checklist. One for performance, accessibility, yada yada. This website seems pretty good. Accessibility slightly underrated. As you can see here, it's got a tick for PWA. And if you scroll, it will tell you, it'll give you a bunch of feedback. So PWA, it gets all the checklists, you drop it down, and it'll tell you what it is that you've done or need to do. If you haven't done it, it has a learn more there. Again, it's pretty much an ABC step book on how to improve your app and implement a PWA.
So it also tests on how visible is, let's say, like SEO, if it's optimized for the search engines, basically, right? Okay.
Yep. As you can see here.
Yeah. Okay.
It tells you exactly what it needs to have search engine optimization and everything.
would we say that essentially PWA apps are better exposed to search engines than actually a native app?
I mean, technically, yes.
I mean, yeah, looking at the way these builds are, literally, it's more like a web somehow. The interesting thing is like a hybrid between a native app and a website, right? So it's got all the goodies of a website that can be easily discovered by search engines, right? But also the usability aspect of actually native app.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, the search engine optimization isn't because it's a progressive web app. That's just another benefit this tool gives you. The progressive web app, it just helps you have the native rich features of native in a website, essentially.
Yeah.
All right. And I think that about wraps it up for my bit. I think we can potentially start moving on to Q&A. So I'll stop sharing.
Very good, very good. Yeah, stop sharing. I think I will go now through the Q&A session. I think we already gathered quite a bit of questions. Just in a second, I'm going to through the questions now. So the first one that I see here is can we have a string view in mobile PWA versus web application? Fewer user menus. That's what it says here in brackets.
I mean, at best, the guess I can have is it's not that having a PWA will automatically give you that. It depends on how you develop the app. So it has nothing to do with PWAs. It's more of a development strategy.
Okay. Thank you, Well. But then there's another question from the audience as well, and is what is the development cost compared with the native app? Maybe I can start with these, and then you guys can fill in this. Probably that good question. It really depends. It definitely the cost can be lower than it is lower because your team is much smaller than as Ben said, it's much smaller than having a developer for an iOS app and a developer for an Android app, and you might probably have a website on a web app, so a responsive website. So you basically include all that together. And so this is why the cost is much more cost efficient. That's therefore, as we mentioned before, is ideal also for an initial stage where you are at a POC or you want to really test the functionalities of the application. So it becomes very cost efficient. And do you guys want to add something else on that?
No, you pretty much covered it. It's simple numbers, really. If you only need one developer and you target all avenues, iOS, Android, or mobiles, versus needing three, it's a numbers game. Pretty easy to do that math.
Yeah. There is actually another question here, which says, how do I migrate existing web app into PWA compliant code?
Lighthouse, as I just showed you, that's one resource that's invaluable, as I just showed there, as well as the other resources on at the end there of the slide. We hopefully can give access to those at some point. If not, we'll try and send them to everyone if we don't have a. Lorraine, are we going to publish these slides?
I think we will publish the webinar after all, so we can people can go that and actually have access to it. It's something that's what is expected to do.
Yep, we'll definitely share the webinar following this session. Yep.
All right. Well, there you go. So you'll have access to all those. You'll have access to all those resources. Just follow them, and when in doubt, just open up Chrome and audit. And as I said, follow it step by step, and it'll help you migrate your website to a PWA.
I think we have another question, pretty fairly technical here. So I'm gonna read that loud to you guys. So based on device type, can we show a smaller setup feature on mobile PWA web app versus full browser menu option?
I don't really understand the questions here.
So the question is based on a type of device. Can we show a smaller setup feature on mobile PWA app versus full browser menu option?
I mean, yes, but that has nothing to do with the PWA. If it's a responsive website, you can just detect what size the browser is and decide to show or not show anything. It doesn't really have anything explicitly to do with the PWA. So yes,
okay,
but not because of the PWA.
So another one again is a fairly technical question as well. Cross OS development platform can allow single code base for building 3 native apps.
So I think he's talking about stuff like.
He's talking about hybrid or.
Yeah, I think he is. So React Native and what was that other one that we worked on recently? Flutter, yeah.
Yeah.
And also with Condova.
Yeah, exactly. There's a fair few native development apps, and again, I would say, yeah, sure, but you still have to deal with the Apple Store at the end of the day, even with those cross-platform hybrids. And as I said, that is, I mean, if you want to do that, then you're all to you, my man. But
so
honestly,
do you mean? Yeah, do you mean like if we develop like an app that eventually is in hybrid mode, they will still have to go through the Apple stores essentially, right? So it becomes essentially the development style is simpler, but again becomes like is built as a native app, right? Is that what you mean?
Well, before PWA, there was a lot of cross hybrids. So you develop on one and it will target all of them, which is fair enough. It did the trick for most of it, but all of these frameworks, I would say, have a steeper learning curve than JavaScript, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, you still have to publish them through their various app stores. The Android store is not so difficult, but the Apple one, again, that's a feat in its own.
Okay. And also
none of that.
Yeah, and also even you use the hybrid approach to create native apps, some of the features may not support, and eventually you have to deal with the native code. So I think using the hybrid approach may make the projects more difficult to maintain, because you have to use JavaScript to maintain, for example, for your UI, but for the native features, you need to implement using the native language. So what I mean is eventually you have to add more additional tools for the hybrid. For example, additional testing framework, and also the language is difficult to maintain later.
Okay. Thank you guys. The other question we have here is how much effort would it take to build a PWA when I already have a responsive website?
Not much, I would say. Again, you follow the steps, you follow Google or Lighthouse. There's lots of resources out there. It should have you up and running on a PWA relatively quickly, I would say.
Would be able to use the same teams to do that, or there is a specific skill set, for instance, that will need to be acquired in terms of building a PWA?
Well, I mean, the resources give you some copy and paste stuff. So if you're not a developer and you want to try your hand at it, I mean, that you can give it a go. But obviously, it helps if you have some development knowledge, and then you just follow the guides and you're on your way.
I also wanted to ask another question, guys. I think we are, please, also to the audience, please feel free to add more questions on the Q&A part. Actually, we still have a few minutes to go. A lot of frameworks, and apps, they provide existing pre-built, right? So that developers can quickly, plug in into their code and basically then customize as they want. How mature is that community, right? Where you can just utilize a third-party software or module that you can integrate in that, because that, in my experience in the past, has speeded up a lot the development process of mobile apps.
Oh.
Just
so did you bring up Unity as a development framework there?
Sometimes we might have some situation where you can essentially already use a login pre-built or other basically maybe forms that can already exist and they can be added to your code, so you don't have to build them from scratch, right? So usually the community, in many cases, especially for development purposes, like there is a large community of people using, let's say, like iOS development, and it's very mature, so that developers can learn and get more information on the go. So my question is like, so how large is this community right now for PWA?
I'm not sure about the size of the community, but as I said, the resources are pretty abundant. And I mean, great to all those previously existing communities. They were trying to address a problem. That problem was obviously cross-platform development. They were all quite passionate about it. And if you want to use those, they all come with a learning curve, I would say. And as Brian says, eventually, the more complex your app becomes, eventually you have to touch native code anyway. So it all depends. PWA, I think, it's on its way up. I wouldn't be surprised if it becomes a standard at some point.
Cool. Great. Thank you very much, Ben. I think so we have a couple more minutes. I'm just checking whether we have any other question from the audience at this stage. I think we have already kind of answered. Would we have not one more question? I think probably time for one more question. Would an e-commerce web app be a good fit for a PWA? I
mean, it depends what he means by would it be a good fit. I mean, I don't see why not. But well, the only thing you really are concerned about, I suppose, on an e-commerce is security. And as we pointed out, if you're going to be a PWA, it has to be over HTTPS, so it'll be secure in that manner. And as long as you use the security protocols you need when making requests and what have you between the user and the app, there is no reason that it can't be a PWA.
Great, thank you so much, Ben. I think we're pretty much done on time. So thank you so much, Ben and Brian, for sharing this insight on progressive web apps. And thank you to everybody on the webinar for taking the time and also sharing your questions with us. If there is any question we haven't been able to answer, we'll make sure we'll follow up with you afterwards. In the meantime, if you'd like to follow us, please do. Our website, LinkedIn. There's also our email and our email address and phone number if you'd like to reach out directly. We will be hosting other webinars in the future. Please, we will send you survey email. If you could take please some time to just quickly answer some of the questions. And if you have any topic that you would like us to talk about and learn more, please feel free to share it with us during the survey. Thank you very much, and please enjoy your lunch the rest of the day, and hopefully we'll see you on next webinar. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.